Back to Legends Live, as presented by the National Basketball Retired Players Association, the home of all our NBA and WNBA legends. I'd like to remind you, you can submit questions during the show that we will answer before we wrap up. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome today's guest. We have former Miami of Ohio Red Hawk. He was a five-time All-Star with with the Cincinnati Royals and a champion with the Boston Celtics. And he was also the first Black general manager and team president in NBA history. We've got Mr. Wayne Embry. Thank you for joining us.
How are you, Stevie?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir? How are things your way?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, I like to ask people, how are you doing? How are you keeping busy during this time?
Well, it's very difficult now because they're pretty much homebound, staying locked in and going out very little. I was in Toronto with the Raptors for 2.5 weeks, but now I just watch news and watch games on television, college and pro games on television. That's about all we can do.
How was the 2.5 weeks with Toronto? How was that?
Well, it was good. We got tested every day and with the practice to kind of stay away from the players and the coaching staff because of following protocol. And went to the games and it was good.
Good.
It's pretty lonely though because you go back to your room and pretty much isolated in your room or in the hotel. But
yeah,
the way times are now, we got to hope and pray that we get through them.
Absolutely. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Now, I mentioned you were a Cincinnati Royal, but you were drafted by the St. Louis Hawks. So as an Ohio native, were you happy to get back closer to home or did you want to get to St. Louis? How did you feel about that?
Well, firstly, I had no idea I'd be drafted. I didn't know that much about the NBA. I wanted to be a Harlem Globetrotter.
Okay.
And I got the call from Marty Blake, who was general manager of the St. Louis Hawks, and said they had drafted me. And I said, fine, what comes next?
Now what?
Yeah, I didn't know much about what the dynamics were in those days. And so I get a call a little bit later on, the next day or so, I've been traded to the Cincinnati Royals. And of course, that was good for me because I grew up in Ohio, only about 70 miles from Cincinnati. And I went to Miami University in Ohio, which is 35 miles from Cincinnati. So it worked out just fine for me. And also, several other players retired that year. I think there was only 3 remaining players back. So to make the team, it wasn't that difficult, but they needed players.
Got a lot of minutes early, I'd say.
Yeah.
Now, I think it was correct me if I'm wrong, your 3rd season when Oscar Robertson got there. 2nd or 3rd season?
He came after the 2nd season, yeah. He came in the 3rd season.
Now, what was a rookie Oscar Robertson like? What was he like just in the locker room, being around?
Great. I got to know him pretty much because during the off season, we'd work out over at the University of Cincinnati. And so I played against him in pickup games. And so we got to develop a relationship then. And, needless to say, he was a great player in college and he carried on into the pros. And I'm glad that we had territorial rights back in those days because that meant he would come to Cincinnati and he certainly helped my game.
What was it like playing with him? Like, actually, you said you did the workouts and off season, but what was it like finally getting him on the court as a teammate?
Well, he set the standard and he encouraged his teammates. And of course, he lead the league in assists and then he gave the ball up quite a bit. And so we developed a pick and roll. And I give him credit for enhancing my career because I'd set a pretty decent pick. And he rolled to the basket and he'd kick it off or do a pick and pop and he'd get it to me. And, I just give him a lot of credit for my development and becoming the player that I did.
Now, back then, he was getting the triple doubles. Was it a big deal back then when he would do it, or it was just kind of Oscar just doing Oscar? He just had another game. That's just kind of how we did.
We didn't pay too much about triple doubles and all those things. We just went out and played.
Right.
And media and that didn't become a thing until later on.
Mm.
And then the fact that he averaged triple-double came to his attention, or to everyone's attention, gee, he's leading the league in all these various categories. And so the triple-double became highly publicized, and it is what we know today.
Yeah, it's very big deal today. Now, your time in Cincinnati, how was Cincinnati as a basketball town? I'm curious.
Well, it was okay because they had two college teams.
Mm.
Cincinnati University of Cincinnati, and Xavier University.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Royals moved from Rochester to Cincinnati, and it took a little while to get traction there. It wasn't much fan attendance early on.
Mm.
And we finally got some traction after we started winning. And of course, that's when Oscar came. We started winning on a consistent basis. Just couldn't beat the Celtics.
Yeah.
But we started getting more fans to come to the games, but it was a tough sell.
Yeah. You played in Cincy, Boston, as well as Milwaukee. Do you have a favorite basketball city of those three?
Well, I got to say Boston because we won a championship there.
Okay.
as a player.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
Of course, when I went to Milwaukee, we won when I was in the front office. But it's much more fun doing it as a player.
Right.
So I'd say Boston.
Boston. Okay. Now, as you know, we've got the AllStar game coming up. I mentioned you made 5 of them. What do you remember about your first AllStar game?
Well, it was quite an honor. It was in Syracuse, I believe.
Okay.
And other than the cold and the snow, going to play in the AllStar game was quite an honor. And of course, like I said, I didn't know that much about the NBA back in those days, and so I didn't know what to expect. It wasn't anything like we have today.
Right.
When you play the game and I think they had a banquet the night before.
They didn't no slam dunk contest or anything. That wouldn't.
None of that. Nope, just the banquet the night before, an All-Star game, and they gave you a set of golf clubs, I think, or a watch or something. I don't know. That's what we got for playing in the All-Star game. Things are a little different today.
Just a little bit, a bit more of a spectacle now.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite of the All-Star games you made, or a favorite memory?
I got several memories. I think it was the All-Star game in Boston, of course, when we weren't going to play the game.
Mm.
That was a significant event that took place then. We want to be recognized as a union, and as part of that, have a pension,
right,
for the players' pension. And it took 2 days to get to Boston because of snow on the East Coast. We had to fly to Minneapolis on a Sunday evening. All-Star game was Tuesday, if I recall. So we flew to Minneapolis on Sunday evening because we couldn't go any place on the East Coast, and spent the night there and took off the next day. Washington opened up, flew to Washington, and spent the night there on Tuesday, the day of the game. We took a train from Washington to Boston. And we got to Boston, and I think Tommy Heinsohn met us in the lobby of the hotel where we were staying. He said, "Hurry up, get your bags, get your backpack, come to the game early because we're going to have a meeting before the game."
Mm-hmm.
And he gave us a little insight as to what it was going to be about. So we get there, both teams were in one locker room, and he gave us a little bit of more detail about what was happening, what had transpired while we were in transit. And he said that we're not going to play the game if we don't be recognized as a union and the owners don't commit to a pension. Mm. And this was going on for, I think we got down to the Boston Garden about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. game was at 8 o'clock. We spent all that time trying to determine what we were going to do. And the commissioner would come in, and the ownership would come in, and Red would come in and say, you guys better get ready and get out on the court. And of course, we were pretty adamant about not doing it.
Mm.
And so finally, we took a vote. And I think it was 22-2 that we weren't going to play. And so dialogue continued. And finally, it was about 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Commissioner came in and said, okay, we're going to commit.
Wow.
So we went out, no warm up, and jump ball, let's go.
You just walk straight out and ready to go.
Yeah. So that was quite a traumatic experience because,
I'd say.
after all we'd gone through to get there because of the snowstorm. And then after the game, I was walking back to the hotel through North Station. And walking back up during the game, at the close of the game, I got the final rebound. And I could have laid it, there was seconds on the clock. I could have laid it back in for a basket, but I chose to just dribble it out because we were up 3 points or something. So why do that?
Mm.
And so walking through North Station, I had several people come and verbally cuss me out. I couldn't understand why.
They had a little something extra on the game.
That's what I found out. I knew nothing about that. Being the country boy that I am and was, I knew nothing about that. And so finally,
There's probably some very happy people on the other side as well. Some people that are very happy you probably didn't lay that ball up.
I said, we won. Why are they so upset? Each won. And then they explained it to me.
Yeah. So the whole time you were, going Minneapolis to Washington to Boston, you all didn't have any idea about sitting out the game? You all weren't aware of that at all?
Absolutely. Wow. No idea.
And you said it was Tommy Heinsohn that kind of brought you guys into the fold?
He met us in the hotel lobby when we got in and said, hurry up, get down to the garden. We got to have a meeting.
Was he the one leading the meeting, or who were some of the main talkers?
He was one. He was leading the meeting, and I think Bob Cousy might have still been around at the time, but Tommy was leading the meeting.
Now, after I'm trying to make sure I have my timeline straight. Before you went to the Celtics, you were ready to retire. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, what happened to bring you back into the mix?
Well, I was going to retire with Cincinnati because, quite frankly, in passenger seatbelt, I could have made more money in private business.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was going to retire and pursue a career with a soft drink company, and so I had announced that I was retiring. And then later on, I still wanted to play in the Stokes game, Maurice Stokes game, which there are those who may recall that game up in the Cutchers, up in the Catskill Mountains. And when I got there, Russell sought me out and said, let's play golf. And we did. And after a couple of holes, he says, you don't really want to retire, do you? And I said, yeah, I'm going to retire to make more money in the corporate world. And he says, well, what if we make a trade for you? And he said, well, I still think I ought to retire. So he says, well, talk to Red when we get in off the golf course. So he takes me to Red's room, and Red says, you're not going to retire. We got a chance to make a trade for you. So if you'll come out of retirement, we can do this deal and you'll be happy. I said, well, Red, I think I can make more money outside. He says, well, you don't have a championship ring yet. You deserve a championship ring. And he says, what do you need? He says, I think, again, fasten your seatbelt, $25,000. You pay me.
The big bucks.
I can make more than that, Red. He said, yeah, but you don't get the playoff money. You get playoff money.
True.
And I said, well, let me think about it. Talk to my wife. So we talked about it and called him a couple of days later and said, okay, we'll come.
Now you end up getting your championship ring that year. What was it like playing with and for Bill Russell? He was the player and coach at that point, correct?
Yeah, he the first year I got there was 67 season, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his first year as a coach. And so that was the year also that 76ers won 72 games, I think. Or I can't remember how many, but they had a hell of a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up beating us in the playoffs, cut the championship string, and so I felt a little bad about that. But then the next year we came back, of course, strong and won the championship. So I got my championship ring. You're right.
Did it take much convincing from Bill and Red after that first year, or you knew you wanted to come back and get the ring before you called it quits?
Well, I signed a 2-year contract, so.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, after that, you ended up playing one more year with Milwaukee. Selected you in the expansion draft. So how was that experience? Like, even getting selected there, deciding to, stick around another year and playing for Milwaukee. How was that experience?
Well, of course, I didn't want to leave the Celtics, but I realized also they could only protect so many players.
Right.
And we were hoping that because of age, they wouldn't take me. And again, Russell and I were on the golf course the day of the expansion draft. And so after 9 holes, I called home to see if my wife had heard anything. She said, yeah, you've been picked by Milwaukee.
Wow.
So I came back to the cart and I took a golf club out and I chased Russell around the golf course a little bit. So we laughed about it. He thought the same thing. They thought the same thing. They wouldn't take me because of age. But as it turned out, Larry Costello was the coach. And of course, I played against Larry for a number of years. And I guess he liked the way I played and wanted me there for leadership as well. So it turned out to be a great move for me, obviously.
Yeah, and after that,
all the years after.
Yeah, I think immediately after that, like, did you have any intention of getting into the front office in Milwaukee or anywhere? Or you were ready to go back to the, private business world?
Absolutely no intention whatsoever, because I had gone to Milwaukee, played that year, and that was the year they drafted Kareem at the end of the season, and I didn't think I could beat Kareem. It was Lou Alcindor then, but he, of course, changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I didn't think I could beat him out. So I did retire and went back to Boston as director of recreation for the city. I did color commentary on the Celtic broadcast. And so I did that for a good part of a year. And the owner of the Bucks came through Boston to the tennis tournament. And because he and Arthur Ashe were good friends. And so he gives me a call and he says, Wayne, can I come by and see you? I said, sure, you got it right, I'll pick you up. So I went and picked him up, brought him by the house. And we chatted for a while and he says, what about coming back to Milwaukee? And I said, no, I don't think so. I think I got things going pretty good here. And I got a chance to get in the McDonald's franchise, and I just don't think I want to leave that. And he says, well, we want you to come back. Really think about it. And so we talked about it a little further. He says, come back. I want you to be assistant to the president because of your experience in that. And he was fairly new to the NBA game. We need you. And so we talked about it. He encouraged my wife as well. And so when he's getting ready to leave, he said, oh, by the way, we got a chance to make a trade for Oscar Robertson. What do you think? I said, well, if you can get Oscar Robertson, you got an immediate championship.
Yeah.
And so he says, well, can you give him a call and tell him you're coming back and maybe give him a little nudge? And I said, well, I'll call Oscar. And I said, I don't know what good to do, but I'll be happy to do it and tell him we're going, whether that have anything to do with it or not, him coming. But we'll see. So it turned out we united in Milwaukee, Oscar as a player and me in the front office. And they did go ahead and win the championship. So I was kind of a prophet.
Yeah, I'd say. Now, how was it?
Didn't take much to realize that, though, did it?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you get Oscar and Kareem together, I feel like it kind of works itself out.
Yeah, it works itself out. And of course, you got players like Bobby Dandridge, who a lot of people don't realize how great a player he was. But he was a great player, and so we had a great team.
Now, the trade for Oscar, or any trade in general, what did like making a trade look like back then? I'm just curious you just pick up the phone and hey, I want this guy, and you just talk it out. How did it work?
Yeah, well, that's how it worked pretty much the way it works now. I guess Milwaukee had an interest, and Oscar had a no trade clause in his contract, so he could determine where he would be traded. And he was kind of anxious to get out of Cincinnati for different reasons, I guess. And so the owners, the general managers were able to make that trade, and it turned out great for Milwaukee.
Now, at that point, again, you said you didn't have any intention. Did they make you aware of it, that you were going to be like one of the first, if not the first, Black, you said assistant to the president, and then eventually general manager? Like, was that on your mind when you took those roles?
Absolutely not. I had no idea that the president was leaving. He was president / general manager, and I had no idea he was leaving. And so one afternoon, ownership called me and said, I want you to be in my office at 4:00. And so I had no idea why. And so I go to his office, and two of his other board members were in the office. And he says, sit down. And I was a little concerned because I thought maybe, yeah, going to fire me. I didn't have any clue why I was there. And he just simply says, you're the new general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks. And I just sat there. I was dumbfounded. He says, aren't you happy? And I said, well, give me some detail. Why?
Right.
Yeah. He says, well, Ray Patterson is leaving. Ray was the president general manager. And he said, he's leaving. And so you're the new general manager. So we worked out the details, and I became the general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks. And at the time, follow up your question, I had no idea that I was the first. I guess I should have, because I've been in the league for that number of years, and I didn't see anybody look like me as a general manager. So, but I never get any thought. I just thought I was named general manager, and I just happened to be Black. I got a job to do.
Right. What were some of the, I guess, struggles or challenges you faced in the front office? Either in Milwaukee, you did some time in Cleveland, you helped out in Toronto, but just overall, what were some of your struggles or some things that took some getting used to in the front office?
Well, the business of basketball, of course, is very difficult. And you have to really be diligent in what you're doing and use your background experiences, try to do the best you can. I realized that early on, I was no longer a player. I had to adopt that philosophy because I had played with some of the guys that I managed early on, because my year in Milwaukee, but also with Oscar all those years, I played with him. So now all of a sudden I had to manage them. And I adopted a philosophy that it's a player's game. I knew that from having been a player, but also that I had to gain mutual respect with them. That they had to respect that I no longer am their teammate or running buddy in the front office, and I had a greater responsibility and that was to create an environment for them to succeed so the challenges of putting together a team, negotiating contracts, all those things were new experience for me. So I had to learn quickly, and I, of course, forever grateful for the help I got from some of the other general managers in the league that kind of helped me along. Pete Newell at the time, Stu Inman, and Jerry Coangelo and I became very close, and so we shared our experiences and ideas, and so it wasn't easy early on.
I bet not. There are currently 8 Black general managers. So what do you think of like the progress that the league has made from the time of you being the first one, and now there are 8? There are more, but still, you could arguably be more.
Well, I think the fact that we have made tremendous progress, and the NBA has been at the forefront of all of that, of diversity and inclusion, and the NBA, I think, has been at the forefront, and always cognizant of the fact that we can do better.
Right.
And so we have to think along those lines. And of course, I encourage those who have an interest to be diligent and do whatever they need to do to prepare themselves and never give up.
Now you were showing us your book. I don't know if you still have it close with you. The Inside Game. I believe you said you wrote that in the early 2000s. Can you tell us about that? You're talking about maybe doing a sequel, but can you tell us about the first part first?
Well, The Inside Game is pretty much a memoir of my life. You know, growing up on a farm in rural Ohio and being the only Black student in high school and being one of the few at Miami University, and my NBA career being the only Black player on the Cincinnati team back in those days, and till Oscar came, and so it's pretty much reliving that history. And then I talk about years in the front office and the experiences and the good, the bad, and the ugly of all that transpired as a GM. Some which will shock people, but it happened, and so I think it is. I've gotten good reviews on it. It's educational as well as social. So,
now what would you like to put or mention in part 2? Like in the nearly 20 years from part 1, you said you were thinking about the sequel. What would you like to cover in the second part?
Well, how the NBA has grown and how it's my 62nd year or something, over 60 years, and kind of pick up from where I left off then and talk about the progress and the game itself, how remarkable it's become. Because you go back in the old days, which I write in the first book about very few fans early on until you started winning, and nothing like today. I think the AllStar game we talked about earlier was the first AllStar game was televised.
Wow.
If my memory serves me correctly, I think it was the first AllStar game that was televised, and that's why it was so important we played the game.
Right.
And so, but just how the game has grown and how it has become diverse. Obviously, you look at the composition of the teams and what's happening, and how it's become a global sport. And we got 6 continents, I believe, represented in the NBA. And I think it's remarkable how the game has grown. And both on the court and off the court, and composition in front offices, and the world of analytics and what all has transpired there. It's just so much that's happened over the years that I think I can put together a pretty good book.
I was gonna say it's plenty left for you there to catch up on.
Yeah.
Do you still follow the game? You still watching games actively?
Well, I am a senior advisor, literally senior advisor to the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
So I'm still much interested in the game and where we go.
Raptors aside, you have any favorites or favorite teams you like to watch, or players you like to keep an eye on?
Of course, I like watching them all. I like to watch young players grow and develop, and I like the players that play with a lot of grit, like our own Kyle Lowry, Freddie Van Fleet, 2 6-foot players that really play with a lot of grit and toughness. And I am glad to see that Embiid and some of the bigs are starting to resurface. Bigs are starting to resurface with the development of them. And but I like to watch all the players, obviously, because that's my job, But of course, LeBron and Kawhi and KD and those guys are always fun to watch. Steph Curry, bad Steph Curry's dad in Cleveland.
Now, are there any players now that remind you of yourself, or?
Wow. I have to think on that one.
Okay. You mentioned like the bigs coming back. The 3-point line debuted after you had retired. So, what do you think of? People are kind of split on it. Like, it's too many threes. Some see it going higher. There's not enough threes. What's your read on it?
Well, I thought it was good innovation for the game. I think when we did that, I was on the competition committee when we brought the 3-point shot in. And I think what it's done is helped improve outside shooting.
Right.
But also, there's been more focus on 3-point shot than the mid-range or even around the basket. And so it's kind of taking the bigs out of the game a little bit. But big, I tell people I shot 3-point shots when I played because Wilton Russell would let me shoot inside. So I had to do better. So
you just to get 3 points for him, not yet.
They got 2 points, yeah. But no, I think it's good for the game. I just like to see more balance.
Right. Cool. Got a couple questions. Before we get to those, I'd like to know what's something that you right now would tell yourself at 18 or 21 years of age.
What would I tell myself?
Any piece of advice you would have for yourself for Wayne Embry at 18 years old or 21 years old?
Wow. I just think have a purpose and have a lot of pride in what you do and do it right. How you perform, how you conduct yourself is very important because people are watching. And I think you can be a great representative of the sport, but as also the person in sex, because we're all human beings before we do anything else. And so how we conduct ourselves, present ourselves, can make a difference.
Definitely. So I think we've got a couple of viewer questions here that we won't keep you too long. First one is, what are your thoughts on the Bucks sitting out Game 5 last summer in response to the shooting of Jacob Blake?
Well, I think they want to make a statement, and we were in a very difficult time, and I think players have a right to make a statement if they see fit, and hopefully people listen.
See, our next question we've got. See, who was your favorite draft pick that you chose as an NBA executive?
Oh boy, who is my favorite? I don't want to pay favorites.
Okay, I guess a couple of your favorites.
Well, Brad Daugherty, of course. We had quite a few in Milwaukee. one that a lot of people don't realize we drafted was Dr. J, Julius Irving. He never got to us, but we did draft him. Boy, let me think.
So that's a good. If you got some time, that means you got you made a lot of good picks that you got to run back through.
Yeah, we did pretty good point guards in Cleveland. I don't know. Brad Daugherty was certainly good, and I don't like to play favorites, but we made a lot of good picks.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, next one is from For Your Eyes too. He says, if you could change one rule to the game, what would it be?
I would go back to the old where players can't palm the ball.
That's
one, I'd go back to that. And I think I would perhaps take the 3-point line out of the corners, make the 3-point line go to the sideline, I'm sorry, as opposed to breaking the break and going to the corner, take away the corner 3.
Why is that? Why take away the corner 3?
Because that's an easy shot. Why should the distance between that shot and the shot out top, you get the same for, I think it's about a foot closer or something. So you get the same number of points for top of the key or top of the R3 as you do from the corner.
So I think that's our last viewer question. We got one last question we ask all our legends. We're getting together our second part of our playlist. What's something that you're listening to now? It can be old, it can be something new. If you listen to it around the house, in the background while you're watching games, anything at all. What do you like to listen to?
I like to listen to Motown.
Okay, the old school.
We're talking about music, right?
Yes, sir.
Gladys and Motown.
Okay.
Gladys is the AllStar game, but she's not going to be singing Midnight Train to Georgia and You're the Best Thing that Ever Happened to Me. She won't be singing those.
Nah.
Those are the grapevine, but I'm a Motown era guy. And of course, jazz. I still like jazz.
Who are some of your favorite jazz musicians?
Country and Western, too, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so you listen to a little bit of everything.
I like all music, yeah. Okay. My mom, growing up, she listened to the Metropolitan Opera on Saturday afternoons and Grand Ole Opry at night. And so I listened to all that, man.
Okay, we'll add a couple songs, get some mix on the playlist for you. Mr. Wayne Embry, thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Well, it's been enjoyable. Thank you.
Of course. We'll talk to you soon. All right, that'll do it for this week's Legends Live. As you know, we've got new episodes live every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central on the NBA Alumni's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch page. I'd like to remind viewers you can watch replays of any episode at legendsofbasketball.com/legendslive. You can catch the audio replay of our conversations by searching for Legends Live, wherever you get your podcast. I'd like to give a big thank you to Wayne Embry for joining us, as well as to Bridget and Julio behind the scenes, and we'll see you next Thursday.